After her adopted mom died, the man who once promised her forever divorced her and their disabled child to marry her own best friend, but he had no idea she had just inherited $700 million, and what she did next would shake their world. Emma sat on the edge of the threadbare couch in her modest apartment, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only companion to her thoughts. Her daughter Lily slept peacefully, oblivious to the seismic shift in their lives. She traced the edge of her mother's photo on the mantel, a lifeline to the woman who had raised her, and a storm of anger and betrayal twisted her stomach. How could he, her husband, the man who once whispered promises of eternity, abandon them the very moment she lost the only person who had ever truly loved her? The memory of his smirk as he told her he was marrying her best friend played like a cruel film. He hadn't just left them, he had flaunted it, parading the wedding photo across social media, while their neighbors whispered, eyes darting with schadenfreude. Even her family hadn't spared her feelings. Her sister mocked her for aiming too high, calling her a loser in front of relatives, deepening the shame that made her chest ache. She had called her former friend in desperation, only to be laughed at over the phone, cruelly reminded of the winner she had become. Emma's nights became a restless purgatory. Creditors, instigated by his careful manipulations, knocked at her door while she hid in Lily's room, wondering how love could so quickly dissolve into humiliation. But beneath the despair, a quiet ember burned, a seed of resolve that she hadn't noticed until one night, when a competitor of her ex-husband stopped by unexpectedly. He was a shadowy figure, suave and calculating, hinting at cracks in her ex's empire, whispering of secrets that could destroy him. Emma's pulse quickened. If the man she once trusted could betray her, could she not outmaneuver him? Days bled into one another, each marked by careful observation. She noticed how he had grown secretive, how the light in his eyes dimmed when she entered a room, how the phone in his pocket was always an invisible barrier between them. She discovered alarming texts from a lawyer on his phone, hints of divorce and asset division, and felt the first icy tendrils of fear twist into determination. Late nights became surveillance sessions, tracking meetings, shadowing hotel rendezvous, cataloging whispered deals. Each revelation deepened her understanding of his duplicity. Offshore accounts, hidden transfers, a mistress complicit in the unraveling of their family. And yet, in the quiet mornings, she continued to perform the role of devoted wife, cooking breakfast while he rushed through the house, feigning normalcy. Emma knew she was playing a dangerous game, but each smile was armor, each laugh a mask that protected her from showing the power she was quietly reclaiming. The gap between him and the man she once loved was widening, and she felt the first taste of control when she overheard him tell someone she wouldn't see it coming. The final blow of that day came in the most ordinary of ways. She spotted them, her ex and her former friend, flaunting their happiness publicly, their laughter sharp against the soft rustle of autumn leaves. The new wife staged deliberate humiliation, brushing past Emma with a mocking smile, whispering for all to hear how easily she had taken her place. Emma's hands clenched. She walked away silently, Lily's small hand in hers, feeling the fire within her grow hotter. That night she stayed awake in their darkened apartment, tracing ledgers, organizing her thoughts, and formulating the first steps in a plan that would unravel the empire that had once humiliated her. Somewhere deep inside, Emma realized this was no longer about revenge. It was about justice, about reclaiming a life stolen, about proving that betrayal could not define her. And yet, a question lingered, raw and impossible to ignore. If she held the power to destroy them, to strip away their carefully constructed world, would she have the courage to strike, or would the ghosts of love and heartbreak hold her back? The answer waited in the shadows, and so did the first moves of the game that would decide all their fates. Emma glanced at the calendar, noting the gala that would mark the public apex of their deception, and she allowed herself a faint, unyielding smile. Tomorrow, everything would begin. Emma woke before sunrise, the pale light spilling through the thin curtains of her apartment. She noticed immediately that he was already gone, his absence a gaping wound that had become routine. The apartment, small and worn, smelled faintly of Lily's breakfast oatmeal from the night before. Emma set the kettle to boil, her movements deliberate and calm, but her mind raced. He had grown colder over the past months, a shadow of the man who once held her hand and promised a future. Mornings that once began with laughter now began with silence, tension palpable in every rushed gesture. She noticed his evasive glances, the way he hid his phone, and the subtle shifts in his routine that spoke louder than words ever could. It was that same day, while clearing the kitchen counter, that she stumbled upon alarming texts she wasn't meant to see. A lawyer's name flickered across his phone screen, messages hinting at divorce, asset division, and plans that didn't include her or Lily. Her pulse quickened. Each word on that screen was a confirmation of what her instincts had known for months. He had been planning this all along. The betrayal ran deeper than abandonment. It was calculated, merciless. Emma's first instinct was despair, but despair gave way to strategy. She reached out to her loyal friend, someone who had always believed in her strength. "Be careful," her friend warned, voice tight with concern. Emma nodded, though inside she was already planning. She began to observe him more carefully, tracking his movements, cataloging transactions, and noting meetings she was not invited to. She discovered drafts of legal documents in his office confirming his intentions, traces of offshore accounts, and patterns of hidden transfers designed to strip her of every last penny. The betrayal was total, and the evidence was now hers. At night, Emma sat in the dim glow of the lamp, watching his public persona unfold. Social media celebrated the union of her ex and her former friend, painting them as a perfect couple, while whispers of her supposed failure circulated through the town. Even her sister had become a cruel accomplice, spreading rumors and enjoying the drama. But Emma had learned the first law of survival. Appearances were weapons, and she would wield them better than anyone. Weeks passed in a tense rhythm. She attended social functions alongside him, pretending to perform the role of dutiful wife, all while secretly recording meetings, tracking financial transfers, and building a dossier of his crimes. She overheard him whispering to his associates that she wouldn't see it coming, a phrase that hardened her resolve. One evening, she observed him in a luxury hotel room, quietly recording discussions about manipulating custody and moving assets offshore. When she returned home, she collapsed in Lily's arms. Exhaustion mingled with the bitter thrill of power. For the first time in months, she realized she could fight back. But the world outside her apartment remained cruel. The new wife flaunted their wealth and happiness, staging public humiliations that Emma endured with quiet composure. At a local cafe, whispers followed her as strangers laughed at the story they thought they knew. Emma's sister joined the chorus, openly admiring the new wife while subtly disparaging her. But Emma was learning patience, watching the cracks in her ex's empire emerge with every careless word he let slip, every fraudulent account exposed by her careful tracking. One night, after a particularly humiliating public encounter orchestrated by the new wife, Emma sat on the balcony of her apartment, the city lights reflected in her eyes. She held a folder of documents, evidence of his lies, forged contracts, and siphoned funds. The quiet thrill of power coursed through her veins. She realized the game had shifted. She was no longer a pawn. She was the one holding the board, and soon the world would notice. Her gaze drifted to a gala invitation resting on the table. The event would bring them together in public, an arena for appearances and whispers, where power and influence collided. Emma folded the invitation, her mind racing with possibilities. Tomorrow she would move a piece. But the question that kept her awake was sharp, unyielding. Would he see her coming, or would the trap she had so carefully laid finally break the empire he thought unshakable? And in that quiet night, Emma made a silent promise to Lily, to herself, and to the memory of her adopted mother. She would rise, and she would ensure that those who betrayed her would witness the strength they had underestimated. The clock ticked toward midnight, and Emma finally allowed herself a rare, fleeting smile, knowing that the storm she had been building for months was about to sweep through their lives. Emma woke before dawn, the apartment bathed in a gray, hesitant light. Lily's soft breathing in the next room reminded her of what she was fighting for. Her small kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and toasted bread, her meager attempt at normalcy. She glanced at the empty chair across from her, knowing he would never sit there again, yet feeling the sting of his absence like a cold draft. Weeks of manipulation, lies, and betrayal had stripped their home of warmth. He returned that evening, impeccably dressed, exuding the confidence of someone who believed the world was his. Emma's heart sank as she noticed the faint perfume on his coat, evidence of another woman, another life he had built while pretending to honor their marriage. He spoke curtly, his tone sharp as knives. "We need to talk," he said, but it was not about them. It was about his career, his plans, his world that no longer had space for her or Lily. He mocked their modest home, their simple meals, the life they had tried to build together. Emma held herself steady, hiding the storm that raged beneath her calm exterior. She worked longer hours, took extra shifts, and sold possessions she had once cherished, all to maintain some semblance of independence in a world that had attempted to strip her of dignity. Each day, she watched him leave for meetings with a quiet dread, knowing he was spending time with her former friend, plotting the life he had already promised to someone else. His absence became a weapon, his coldness a calculated method to make her crumble. But she refused to break. One evening, a wedding invitation arrived, boldly announcing his marriage to her former friend. The envelope, thick and glossy, carried the weight of humiliation she had endured for months. Her friend urged caution, but Emma made a decision that surprised even herself. She would attend. She would face the truth, witness the betrayal, and prepare for the moment when the world would see the power she had quietly amassed. On the day of the wedding, Emma dressed with unexpected elegance, a quiet assertion of her dignity. She entered the grand hall amidst whispers and curious glances, every eye tracing the figure she once was and the strength she now projected. Her ex-husband gave a speech, subtle in its cruelty, belittling her while glorifying his new life. The other woman laughed, unaware that each word she uttered only tightened the invisible threads of the trap Emma had been weaving. Emma remained calm, unyielding, until the tipping point arrived. A wealthy guest, the father of the new bride, confronted her ex publicly, revealing fragments of the truth he had tried to hide. The lies, the schemes, the abandonment of a family he had once vowed to protect. The room froze. Emma stepped forward, her voice steady as she confirmed the reality of their marriage, the deception, and his betrayal. Gasps filled the air. The new wife faltered, the veneer of triumph cracking, and the audience witnessed the first tremors of the carefully constructed empire beginning to fracture. The humiliation of her ex-husband and former friend was palpable, but Emma did not gloat. Her eyes remained on Lily, on the friend who had stood beside her, and on the father who had unknowingly helped her reveal the first layer of truth. The room buzzed with tension, whispers and pointed looks like a storm pressing against the walls. Her ex-husband, caught off guard, tried to regain control, but each attempt only exposed further deceit. By the time the ceremony ended, Emma had planted the first seeds of reversal. She walked away silently, leaving behind the whispers, the judgment, and the humiliation that had once defined her. Outside, the cool evening air felt like liberation. Each breath a reclamation of the dignity she had fought so fiercely to protect. But her plan was only beginning. The gala awaited, a public arena where the stakes would be higher, the consequences sharper, and the exposure complete. Emma looked at Lily, brushing a loose strand of hair from her daughter's face. "This is just the start," she whispered, feeling the surge of power that had grown quietly over months of observation and strategy. She had endured betrayal, public shame, and deception, but the fire inside her had only strengthened. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the city, Emma's gaze lingered on the distant lights of her ex-husband's world, a world built on arrogance, lies, and stolen trust. And for the first time, she imagined the moment she would step into that world, folder in hand, and expose the truths they had tried so desperately to bury. The night was heavy with anticipation, and in her chest the thrill of impending justice beat like a drum. Her hand lingered on the gala invitation she had received days earlier. The moment to strike, to reclaim everything, was close. But the question that gnawed at her resolve was clear. Would she confront them with fury or with calm precision. Either way, the next encounter would change everything. Emma arrived at the gala dressed in a sleek, midnight blue gown that hugged her form with quiet elegance. Every step she took commanded attention without a word. She felt the weight of the room's eyes but let it fuel her resolve. Her ex-husband had arrived earlier, as expected, flaunting his new marriage like a trophy. The younger woman clung to his arm, laughing with the ease of someone who believed victory was hers. Whispers rippled through the crowd, some mocking, some admiring, but all focused on the trio at the center of this private-public drama. From the moment she entered, Emma sensed the careful choreography of deceit around her. Her ex's gestures were exaggerated, performative, designed to make her appear irrelevant. The younger woman deliberately spilled wine near her, feigning clumsiness, and laughed while he loudly mocked Emma's charity work. Gasps and murmurs circled the room, but Emma remained calm, unshaken, a quiet predator observing her prey. Each humiliation he attempted to orchestrate only strengthened the fire in her chest. Beneath the glittering chandeliers, Emma's plan moved silently. She had already collected testimony from employees who had suffered under his deceit, tracked financial manipulations, and verified forged contracts and hidden accounts. Each piece of evidence was a dagger she held carefully, ready for the right moment. She noticed cracks forming in their facade. The younger woman's laughter faltered slightly, her eyes darting to Emma, realizing perhaps that the woman she thought defeated had grown stronger, more formidable. Dinner passed with subtle tension. Every toast, every polite word, was a carefully calculated minefield. He tried to corner her verbally, sneering at her lineage and subtle achievements. But she responded with composure, her calm unsettling him. In whispered exchanges with allies, she confirmed once more that every forged signature, siphoned fund, and hidden account was documented and ready. The storm she had been preparing for months was on the verge of breaking. Then came the moment she had been waiting for. The boardroom portion of the gala, where investors and influential figures would gather to sign off on a major contract, became her stage. Emma approached quietly, folder clutched tightly in her hand. Eyes followed her, puzzled murmurs rippling through the crowd. Her ex-husband tried to regain control, attempting to humiliate her publicly, but his voice faltered under the quiet authority she radiated. With deliberate calm, Emma opened the folder and began revealing the evidence. Forged contracts bearing her signature, hidden accounts siphoning company funds, and manipulations orchestrated with the younger woman's complicity. Investors gasped, phones flashed, whispers grew into audible panic. He tried to interrupt, but each attempt only drew more attention to his misdeeds. The younger woman, realizing exposure was imminent, betrayed him to save herself, confirming Emma's findings. The gala transformed into chaos, a perfect storm of financial collapse and public humiliation. In the midst of the uproar, Emma's sister, who had once mocked her, was exposed for spreading rumors and manipulating perceptions, her social standing crumbling in real time. The three people who had once caused her so much pain now turned on each other, screaming accusations and scrambling to save their reputations. He begged her for assistance, his empire slipping through his fingers, but Emma's calm voice cut through the noise. "You chose deals over love. You destroyed yourself," she said, each word precise, measured, and devastating. Outside, the night was cool, the chaos inside the gala echoing faintly against the city streets. Emma's competitor, the one who had hinted at her ex-husband's vulnerabilities months ago, approached, acknowledging her strength with a nod. "You did it," he said, but she shook her head. Independence had always been her goal. Power in partnership was not what she wanted. She watched the trio she had toppled retreat, their world now fractured. Reporters swarmed, investors panicked, and the younger woman disappeared in disgrace. Her sister, humiliated and expelled from social circles, followed shortly after. And as Emma walked through the crowd, heads turning with a mix of respect and awe, she realized that betrayal, while devastating, could be transformed into something more potent. Proof that she could rise above it. On the balcony, away from the chaos, she held Lily's hand and gazed at the city skyline. Lights flickered like distant stars, each one a reminder that the world was vast, full of opportunity, The storm had passed, leaving ruin behind, but also clarity. Emma breathed deeply, feeling the weight of months of preparation and pain lifting. She had claimed her dignity, her power, and her freedom. And somewhere in the quiet of the night, she allowed herself a smile, knowing that the final chapter, the one she had been building toward since her adopted mother's death, was hers to write. The morning after the gala, the city felt quieter, as if holding its breath in the aftermath of the chaos. Emma stood at the balcony of her penthouse, Lily by her side, the soft sunlight casting a golden glow over the skyline. The storm she had endured, the betrayal, the humiliation, the deceit was behind her, yet its echoes lingered, a reminder of how far she had come. The documents she had wielded like a weapon had toppled an empire, exposed lies, and revealed the true character of those who had once claimed to love her. Her ex-husband's reputation was in ruins. Investors had pulled out, and legal authorities had launched investigations into the offshore accounts, forged contracts, and siphoned funds he had meticulously hidden. The younger woman, once her rival, had vanished from the social scene, humiliated and disgraced. Her sister, who had once sneered at her for daring to hope, had been publicly exposed for spreading rumors and subtly aiding the other woman's schemes. Emma felt a quiet satisfaction, but no triumphal glee. She had never sought revenge for its own sake. Her actions were precise, deliberate, and just, a restoration of the life and dignity that had been stolen. Weeks passed in a rhythm of rebuilding. Emma took control of her inherited wealth with deliberate care, ensuring Lily's future was secure through a protected trust. She signed the final divorce papers, the ink a symbol of independence, and the closing of a chapter marred by betrayal. The authorities confirmed her ex-husband's misconduct, freezing assets and stripping him of his position. The younger woman disappeared from view entirely, a cautionary tale in whispered social circles. Emma's sister, shunned from the community she once tried to impress, had no choice but to reckon with the consequences of envy and cruelty. Emma's bakery flourished, supported by the community and by the very families who had once whispered about her supposed failures. The former friend of her ex, whose cruelty had once seemed unstoppable, had been forced to confront the reality of lies and manipulation. Even she extended a tentative olive branch, humbled by the truth of Emma's resilience and integrity. Slowly, a sense of balance returned to Emma's life, one built not on vindictiveness, but on competence, intelligence, and unwavering resolve. In the quiet moments, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The betrayal had been total, her husband's deceit, the public humiliation, the manipulation of assets, the emotional distance, and the ruthless ambition of those around her. Yet she had survived, not by luck, but by strategic thinking, patience, and the careful assembling of evidence. She had learned to observe, to anticipate, and to act with precision. Most importantly, she had learned to transform pain into power. One afternoon, she met her former competitor, the man who had first hinted at her ex-husband's vulnerabilities. He offered partnership, admiration, even influence in future business ventures. But Emma declined politely, knowing that her independence was more valuable than any alliance. She had fought to reclaim herself, her dignity, and her daughter's future, and she would not compromise that hard-earned freedom. Emma watched Lily play in the sunlight that streamed through the kitchen window. The child's laughter, unburdened and pure, was a reminder of what mattered most. Emma had secured not only her own freedom, but a legacy for her daughter, one built on courage, intelligence, and unbreakable resolve. She had faced betrayal, social humiliation, and financial manipulation, and had emerged not just unbroken, but stronger, wiser, and more respected than she had ever imagined. That evening, as the city lights began to twinkle like distant stars, Emma stood once more on the balcony. The skyline stretched before her, vast and full of possibility. She allowed herself a quiet smile, savoring the peace that came from reclaiming power without losing integrity. She had been betrayed, humiliated, and underestimated, but the world now saw a woman who had risen above it all. Beneath the surface of triumph, a deeper lesson lingered. Betrayal could break a person, but rising above it, as Emma had, could make the world remember a name. The empire that once oppressed her lay in ruins. The rivals and betrayers were scattered. And in her hands rested a future crafted by strength, foresight, and unyielding resolve. Emma exhaled, feeling the weight of the past lift, and turned her gaze toward the horizon. Whatever challenges awaited, she would meet them with the same clarity, courage, and calm precision that had carried her through the darkest days. She was free. She was unshakable. And the world would never forget the woman who had transformed betrayal into triumph.